Switch your chair.
Call the meeting to order. Worthington City Council regular meeting, 5:30 p.m. Monday, October 28th, 2024. City Hall Council chambers. If I could have everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. No additions or changes to the agenda, so if we have a motion.
Move to close the agenda.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. On to public hearing on residential property tax abatement, community development, case item 1.
Move to open public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried to open hearing.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Exhibit 1A is a copy of a City of Worthington residential property tax abatement program application submitted by Dan Wagner on behalf of Colleen Bentz. The applicant is seeking approval of tax abatement for the construction of a single-family home on Sterling Avenue. The new home will be located at the corner of Sutherland and Sterling. Staff has reviewed the application and concluded that it meets all the parameters of the program guidelines and is therefore recommending approval of the application. To comply with state statutes regarding tax abatement, a public hearing has been scheduled tonight to allow for public comment. Should council concur with staff's recommendation, it may do so by adopting the resolution in Exhibit 1B. Council action is requested.
Okay, anyone have any testimony? Comments, concerns?
Move to close.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Okay,
We got to take action.
Move to approve.
okay, we have a motion to close.
Move to approve the
Move
tax.
to approve. Okay, we have a motion and seconded.
No.
Second.
How you do?
Pardon me?
How you do? We have a second.
So we have a motion to close the hearing, right?
No, we already closed.
So we need, okay, so we need action on the hearing then.
We have a motion in a second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, on with the consent agenda, city council minutes, city council water and light commission special joint meeting minutes of October 16th, 2024. City council meeting minutes of October 14th, 2024. Minutes, boards and commissions, water and light special meeting minutes of October 16th, 2024. Joint Powers Transit Authority meeting minutes of July 25th, 2024. General fund statement of revenues, expenditures for a period of January 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2024. Municipal liquor store income statement for the period of January 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2024. Olson Park statement of revenue and expenditures, budget and actual for the period of January 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2024. Fieldhouse statement of revenue and expenditures, budget and actual for the period of January 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2024, and bills payable.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. On to City Council Engineering.
Good evening. My first item is a stormwater utility budget and hopefully first reading of an ordinance to amend the stormwater utility rate. The proposed 2025 stormwater utility fund operating and capital improvement budgets, along with the equipment revolving schedule, are currently being updated. In 2024, stormwater utility rates increased by 10%. As stormwater management requirements for the community continues to grow, the city is also facing rising construction costs and the need to address capacity upgrades and deteriorating pipes and structures. The current operating revenue for the utility is projected to be approximately $848,000 in 2024. To fund the Centennial Park Lift Station rehabilitation, a rate increase of $161,365 is recommended. This would result in a proposed 19.25% stormwater utility rate increase for the 2025 budget. The City Council originally adopted an ordinance in December 2003 establishing the city's stormwater system as a utility with an annual stormwater fee rate for residential use. The rate is adjusted annually using a multiplier based on land use multiplied by the property area and billed across 12 monthly payments. To meet 2025 revenue needs, the base annual residential rate per acre will need to be $409.27 compared to the current rate of $343.20 per acre. For a standard residential lot of 0.24 acres, the proposed 2025 monthly charge would be $9.02, an increase of $1.46 from the current rate of $7.56. An ordinance amendment will be required to update the stormwater utility rate accordingly. The per acre rate for land uses other than residential will be as follow, the bottom chart. Basically, commercial will be increased from 57.45 cents to 68.51 cents. Industrial from 47.73 to 56.92. Multifamily lot from 42.30 to 50.44. Institutional from 57.45 to 68.51. And next chart is just an examples of different lots. Staff recommends that council give a first reading to the proposed ordinance in Exhibit 1 to amend the base annual rate to $409.27 per acre. Should the proposed rate increase be approved, the 2025 Stormwater Utility Fund operating and capital improvement budgets and equipment revolving schedule will be updated and presented for council approval of the proposed 2025 budget. And I'm looking, if we approve this 19.25% this year, I'm hoping that either we don't or vary at the minimum of increase for next couple of years. And again, just recapping what I read, the major reason that we're increasing this much is because of that lift station rehabilitation on Tower Street. That was on CIP for years, and we did it. We are using a lot of big part of that project from the reserve fund, yet we need to increase a little bit of revenue to cover that cost.
This is the lift station that the pump burnt out during the June flooding on Sunday morning. And just so people understand, the state of Minnesota implemented what they call the MS4 rules. Cities over a population of 10,000 have to comply with MS4, which is managed stormwater. So included in that is street sweeping, cleaning catch basins. Just our operational costs based on MS4 requirements are over $500,000 a year. So that's where a lot of this funding goes, is our ongoing annual maintenance operations of our stormwater system. And now we're getting caught up with a number of undersized storm sewer systems, improvements, repairs, and some of these have just not been brought to the forefront in previous years, and we're to the point where we can't ignore them any longer.
So you're putting a bigger pump in this one than was
We're replacing
before?
one as of right now, and because that building is so old, the foundation of the building is very deteriorated, and that building doesn't have any insulation whatsoever, and the roof is very old. That those pumps are replaced through the roof. There's an opening gate at the top, and those are very old and broke. So we're basically
So
fixing all
what's the,
that.
like, long-term plan with that then? Like, the pumps you're gonna put in, would that work until you get a better structure around it? Or what's the
We,
long-term?
these pumps can only be accessed through the roof with a crane. And
As of right now, we don't have proper access to that building through the roof to replace that pump.
So does this money include fixing the building as well?
Correct.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
What's the life expectancy of the pump then?
That I don't have answer.
You know how long,
Hopefully-
those pumps have been there for as long as,
This project was, on the books, like Goose said, for I don't know how many years, and I know the initial cost estimates 15 years ago were like $250,000, and they didn't want to do anything. And now I think your initial cost estimates are somewhere around $900,000. So we kicked the can down the road for 15 years, and now we've had a problem with the pumps. The new ones you don't access through the roof, it's just obsolete and it needs to be replaced.
So you're gonna put new cement in, new door, new building, everything?
Insulation.
Basically, we're doing the entire lift station.
And the electric panel is very old too, and electrician recommended to replace whole thing as well.
Is this the one right at the edge of the softball field?
Yep, the south end of softball field.
So this probably, given the age of the pump, probably would not qualify for some of the FEMA.
we do have it is included in our FEMA request for the pump that failed.
Yep.
We could repair it for 12,000 or replace that particular pump for 18,000. We were
Yeah.
replacing
to
it.
replace it.
And when we met with FEMA, they seemed encouraging that would qualify for funding.
It just, I think the roof just got hit with too many softballs.
Yeah. Question about, so if I'm reading this right, the entirety of the 19.25% increase, the entire sum of that will go to the lift?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So with the year after in 2026, because of that project is taken care of, that amount will be start going into reserve fund partially to restore the reserve fund or some other projects in the CIP.
I do the maintenance portion of that 606 budget, and we didn't increase anything in that from the last year. That's basically been flat. This is basically to do one big, huge project is why this increase was coming. And then for future years to replenish the reserves and whatever other projects come up.
Is there other lift pumps that are of issue needing?
No, this is the only one we have. The only stormwater lift station is the only one we have.
Okay, all right. Any more questions from council?
Move to approve. First reading, second?
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Second item, order preparation feasibility reports for service road street improvement. Exhibit 2 is resolution ordering the preparation of a report on the reconstruction of Service Road from Spring Avenue to Service Drive and the extension of Service Drive from Spring Avenue to Trunk Highway 60. The proposed improvements for Service Road includes base reconstruction, resurfacing, curb and gutter, driveways, and sanitary sewer services. The reports will be prepared by Bolton & Menk, Inc. For Service Drive, the project involves extending the road to Trunk Highway 60 and includes base reconstruction, resurfacing, curb and gutter, driveway, water main, reconstruction, and sanitary sewer services. While the project has received a state grant, the grant will not cover 100% of the cost. The remaining cost after deducting the grant amount from the total project cost will be assessed to the abutting property owners. This includes costs for engineering, field inspection, sanitary sewer services, and water services. Upon receipt of the report, the council will be requested to order a hearing on the proposed improvements. Staff recommends that council adopt the resolution in Exhibit 2. So the grant is about 1.44 million, and we're estimating about 1.8 million the total project cost, including the utility part. And this grant does not cover utility replacement. So extra about $400,000 on top of what the grant money is for replacing the utility, which is going to be assessed. So it'll be very minimal amount of assessment, we're hoping.
What is the age of the utilities in that area, or are you adding additional that don't exist yet?
We're not really adding anything. It's really old. There's sanitary sewer that goes on the north of Graham Tire, that gravel road that serves the Graham Tire, all that businesses. That was very old clay pipe, so we're replacing that since we're putting permanent pavement. This would be a very good time to replace everything so we don't have to go back and dig a new pavement. And there is a very old water main, about, I believe that was 12-inch, that goes through that lots into the trailer park. We're just replacing this section of the water main so we don't have to dig that new pavement either. And the reason we're doing only the partial water is because the utility department didn't know about this grant coming in. It was we were notified early this year, so they didn't have any funding or revenue plan to spend this year. So we're just replacing that where it's crossing the road, and rest of them, utility department will come up with their CIP.
During construction of this service road on the north side, I'm thinking where the sanitary line is, do you move it off to one side or the other of the road, or I mean, it looks like you're keeping it in the center of the road, and if you're going to pave over it, I just was wondering.
We can. That was just a concept. We just threw it in the sketch. We don't have much details at this point, but we probably will move to one side of the street so we don't have to tear down the entire street. That's usual practice, what we do. And also, we want to go ahead at this one and finish before 2027, so people can use that whole road as a for turnback project, so they can use it as an alternative way to the town.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Move to approve the resolution for feasibility report.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. On to City Council Community Development.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this is essentially just a discussion item on zoning for cannabis businesses. We're not looking for motions tonight, just consensus and whether you guys are happy with the stuff that we'll discuss here tonight so we can move forward into creating ordinances that will actually go up for public hearings, things like that. So at its October 1st meeting, the Planning Commission discussed a preliminary set of zoning requirements for cannabis businesses. The discussion focused primarily on what zoning districts the various businesses should be allowed in. The information that follows was presented to the Commission along with staff recommendations. And then as I went through, if you read through that, I did try to note any changes to the recommendations based on the Commission's feedback at that point. And then just a note here, state law does not restrict how a local government conducts its zoning designations for cannabis businesses except for certain buffering and distance requirements. Therefore, the city must decide these requirements. So state law designates 13 distinct business types that fall into 8 main categories. I do list those all here. I'm not going to read every definition, but the 13 business types are micro business, meso business, cultivator, manufacturer, retailer, wholesaler, transporter, testing facility, event organizer, delivery service, medical cannabis combination business, lower potency hemp edible manufacturer, and lower potency hemp edible retailer. So those are the different business license types that OCM will actually give to people. These businesses can then be grouped into 8 different categories, and these 8 categories are what we're ultimately going to base our zoning requirements on. Those 8 are cultivation, so basically any of the 13 business types that allow cultivation fall into group 1. 2 is cannabis manufacturing, processing, and extraction. Same deal there. Hemp manufacturing, wholesale, retail, transportation, delivery, and events. Don't get too lost in what in the world an event is, because we don't really know either, to be honest with you. So Exhibit 2A is a helpful guide from the Office of Cannabis Management discussing these categories, what specific business types would fall into each, and just other things like that. I will say, out of all the guidance coming from them, this one's actually pretty good. The only thing I would add as you kind of look through that is that lighting should be a consideration as well, especially for cultivation, where if you have a major growing operation, you're going to have artificial grow lights that could potentially negatively impact the surrounding property. So with that, the recommended schedule of use allowances here. So this is essentially what businesses are going to be allowed in what zoning district. Category 1, cultivation, zoning districts permitted would be M1, M2, and TZ. M1 and M2, again, are the city's only 2 industrial districts. Those should permit indoor cultivation only. TZ, or transition zone, should be permitted only outdoor cultivation. The reason for that is that TZ is essentially the closest thing we have to an agricultural type district in our zoning ordinances. And then all 3 should require conditional use permits as well. The next one, cannabis manufacturing, processing, and extraction, should only be allowed in M1 and M2 districts. Initially, we brought the recommendation that we felt it could be either permitted outright or require a conditional use permit. Planning Commission had some mixed opinions and suggested requiring a conditional use permit to stay on the safe side with that one. And then hemp manufacturing, the exact same thing, M1 and M2. Again, we initially went in with the recommendation that it could go either way. They suggested requiring a conditional use permit, kind of to be on the safe side there. Wholesale, M1, M2, and B3. And then noted here that staff recommends B3 should be allowed by conditional use only. This follows requirements for general warehousing. So wholesale, you're essentially talking about a distribution type business, trucks in and out, general warehousing, just like any other business. Those are permitted in the B3 district by conditional use only, and then permitted in the M1 and M2 district here. Cannabis retail, we put as B2, B3, and B4, so 3 out of the 4 commercial zoning districts, and then all 3 should require conditional use permits. Transportation, this one admittedly is a little bit strange in its definition. Essentially, to the best of our understanding, this would constitute kind of like a fleet-based business. So if you have a physical location, essentially you're going to be storing vehicles, is how we're interpreting this. And so staff recommends this could be permitted in the 2 industrial districts with a clarifying definition put in the ordinance with that. Delivery is also the same thing. Essentially, you'd probably be looking at, a good example would be like a truck yard, but probably not semi-trucks. You'd be looking maybe like vans or something of that nature. Again, M1 and M2, and then permitted with a clarifying definition. And then events get a little strange here, but we think the limit of where the zoning ordinances go with this would be what zoning districts can you have an event in. And we put those as B2, B3, B4, M1, and M2. So essentially commercial and industrial districts, trying to make sure we, at the minimum, keep those out of residential neighborhoods and residential zones. And then there would certainly be additional requirements and licensing put in place by City Council. I have seen they've got a draft of some administrative rules from the state level coming down for events. Some of it, like commercial grade fencing requirements and things like that. I don't really know what an event would entail. It could be some kind of, I don't know, farmer's market type thing, but for cannabis, it could be a growing competition thing. So essentially we're just proposing.
Tasting, could be a tasting.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So we're just trying to make sure those are limited to commercial
Like a
industrial.
one-day liquor event or
Yeah.
something. It would be similar to that, I would guess.
Yeah. So the Planning Commission concurred with the recommendations above, although did defer to council's judgment regarding whether manufacturing businesses should be permitted by right or require conditional use permit. So with that part, are there any questions or comments on all that so far?
Clear as mud.
Are you good with all that?
I think we want a conditional use permit on any of them. And just as a reminder, a conditional use permit, the use is permitted in that zone, but it gives the city council the opportunity to impose reasonable conditions, that whether it be screening or parking or separation or, I mean, anything that would be considered reasonable that would not impact the surrounding.
Like grow
Environment.
lights, a whole bunch of grow
Right.
lights out in the open probably wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah,
You'd
things
have
like
to
that.
put
Yeah.
Get a better understanding of what their intentions are anyways, of what,
Right, when they apply for
Working on, yeah.
a license, yeah.
And then, again, to reiterate, no permitted use in any residential.
Nope. Nope, nothing in residential, and then nothing in the B1, which is neighborhood commercial. There's only one property zone that way in town, so we left that off of everything as well. I will mention, we'll continue to evaluate this as all this starts up and make changes as necessary as we find out maybe what works. Hopefully we don't find out what doesn't work, but that's always a risk as well.
is this something that's happening in some other cities that are our size as well? Or is this something that state that,
Every city has to figure out their zoning requirements, yeah.
Every town in Minnesota.
Every city, every county in Minnesota does, yep.
And people that applied for license through the state, which we don't have to evaluate license application, that's done at the state level. Then if they come to Worthington and request the opportunity to.
Registration. from us, yeah.
Registration, they have to have their state approved license. And then the statute did put some restrictions on what we could restrict. So,
And fees.
Yeah, there are some limits on fees. I think we're pretty much going to probably set those at the maximum we can. They wrote those a little bit strange. It's kind of based on what they charge for a state license. You'll see all that later, but we're planning to pretty much set those pretty much at the maximum to make sure we cover all of our expenses.
it's only been a year and a half. I understand why they haven't clarified a number of things. But
We're trying to stick on the safe side of pretty much everything here.
absolutely.
it can go live in January 2025. So we're really getting to the time where we need to get our ordinance moving forward so that we can try to meet the demand in early 25 if there happens to be one.
If I read this, the cultivation has to be an inside.
Yeah, unless it's on a property zone TZ, which those are essentially going to be farm fields on the outskirts of town for the most part. Without putting the transition zone in there somewhere, there just wasn't anywhere that you could reasonably put outdoor cultivation in a way that would make sense. And that's the closest thing we have really to an agricultural type district. And that's kind of what that business would be in a way. We aren't anticipating any big cultivation operations coming to town, but we do need to be prepared in the event they do. All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. And you guys are all good, particularly the retail B2, B3, and B4. That's your downtown. That's pretty much all your commercial districts, so. Good with all those?
Yep.
All right. Moving on then, buffer guidelines. So this is the last section we need to talk about today. This one, state law is pretty specific on. The city may prohibit the operation of a cannabis business within 1,000 feet of a school or 500 feet of a daycare, residential treatment facility, or an attraction within a public park that is regularly used by minors, including playgrounds and athletic fields. So for clarity, these are the maximum requirements the city may set. A city may opt for no buffering requirements or could opt for lesser distance requirements, such as 500 feet from a school. So when you look at that, your options to select are basically 0 to 1,000 feet around a school, and then 0 to 500 feet around a daycare, treatment facility, attraction within a public park used by minors. So Exhibit 2B shows the maximum possible buffer the state law allows for. That's 1,000 feet from schools and 500 feet from daycares, parks, etc. I will note on Exhibit 2B, we don't include any of the in-home daycare centers or residential treatment facilities. Although I have gone through all those that are licensed in the city. There are 2 that come anywhere close to commercially zoned properties. One's on Diagonal Road. That's just getting a little close to the county public works property that's zoned commercial. And then the other one is, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name. It's the daycare that's kind of part of that church near downtown here. Yes, thank you. And then if you look closely, I did miss a few of the parks in there, but I hit pretty much all the parks that would affect commercially or industrially zoned areas. Notably, like I forgot to put a buffer around Chautauqua Park, but when you put in the maximum 500 foot around there, you're not at any properties that would otherwise allow for a cannabis business. And then going on there, the primary area of concern is Oxford Street, north of Worthington High School and Trojan Field. At the maximum possible buffers, cannabis businesses would be prohibited along Oxford Street from Humiston to McMillan. You'll see there in Exhibit 2C, Exhibit 2C is a different thing. Exhibit 2B, basically the entire intersection of Oxford and Humiston, and then the north and south sides of the road all the way down to the intersection of Oxford and McMillan, all 4 corners there would be prohibited, the whole stretch there, if you chose to go with the maximum buffers allowed under state law. So that was kind of the area that we zoned in on to try to figure out, is that what we want, is that not what we want, things like that. And then the initial recommendation that we brought to Planning Commission was 200 feet from schools and then no other buffering requirements outside of that. And then you can see in Exhibit 2C that shows a close-up of that portion of Oxford Street there with a 200-foot buffer around Worthington High School and Trojan Field. Staff believes that's better than the maximum possible buffer, but still recommends excluding Trojan Field. Planning Commission discussed this quite a bit, and they actually wound up recommending a 200-foot buffer around schools and a 200-foot buffer around attractions within a public park regularly used by minors, including playgrounds and athletic fields. So that would essentially leave you at that stretch of Oxford Street that with that 200-foot buffer, you would see some prohibited properties, but nothing too major there. So
What was the discussion as to, I'm just thinking 200 feet isn't very far. If somebody's old enough to get any of this type of thing, 200 feet make a difference? I'm just
The
trying
age
to.
is 21, is that right?
yeah, I believe so.
Initially, I questioned the Trojan Field buffer. But then, thinking about it, we have a lot of people that attend events there, both locally and from surrounding towns. Is that the image we would like to project next to our main athletic field for, in that one, essentially
Just in that one block area.
one black area? So I've kind of changed my thoughts on it anyway, that I think Trojan Field should be included in the buffer.
That makes sense. Just wondering what the rationale was behind, that's common sense, that makes sense.
I think
Well-
it should be included too.
The buffer line, and I asked Matt for clarification on this, if that 200-foot buffer line encroaches any part of a property, the entire property is exempt from being able to,
Yeah, there are actually two different ways we could write it. You could do it front door to front door, essentially, brick to brick, or property line to property line. And I think we're going to go the property line to property line route. That's the buffers you're seeing. It's certainly the easiest way to calculate that. You can really get into the weeds if you want to go brick to brick on that.
gets the
It's
bricks
just not
moved.
necessary, yeah.
Well, how about the storage shed on the end of the property versus the?
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, and Planning Commission discussed with the 200-foot buffer that, it's not really restricting that much of Oxford Street there, and it would kind of keep signage and just that type of business from being projected at people going to Trojan Field, so that's the route they recommended going with that.
Matt and the Planning Commission have done a lot of work on this, and I applaud them for all of their
Yeah.
oh, thank you.
studies and information that they've put together.
So you guys all agree with the 200-foot buffer, is that what I'm hearing?
And include Trojan Field as,
Yeah, so it's kind of wrapped up the one definition, attraction within a public park regularly used by minors, including playgrounds and athletic fields. So you'd wind up with a 200-foot buffer around basically any playground as well as Trojan Field.
They just don't, we don't happen to have many commercial areas
Next to parks, yeah.
next to parks, so it's not going to have.
And then the one part I do want to clarify with council as well, as proposed, that would exclude daycares from any buffer requirements. Is that the direction you want to go?
It's, I can understand why, because daycares can kind of come up, especially residential daycares. And then if there's then what do you do? Can you not have a daycare there because there's a shop close by, or what happens then?
Yeah, are you making the retail business non-conforming now, and now they can't expand, or things? And as it stands right now, you could put a buffer around daycares. It wouldn't affect any commercial properties, save for the one on Diagonal, but they're not going to open a dispensary at the county public works property anyways, so not really a concern there.
I think you guys did a nice job.
All right, so continue on as proposed with the 200-foot that Planning Commission suggested, and no daycares.
I'm okay with that.
All right,
Good.
perfect, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to committee reports. I have nothing.
I have nothing.
No report.
I attended some of us were invited to a plane dedication for a local organization here that calls Worthington home out at our airport. They were donated an aircraft for service, and they just had a nice group supper to dedicate their plane for their mission, and we hope to see more from them. They're looking at expanding out at the airport, so you'll be able to see more about Proclaim Aviation hopefully in the future. So.
Yeah, that was a nice donation from, I think, Jim and Darlene. I didn't get their last names. They're from Kentucky.
Yep.
But yeah, the airplane that they've got can go probably fly from New York to England. refueling, and it's got a pressurized cabin, so we'll be able to utilize that quite well. Actually,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. Dennis?
No report.
Okay, Steve?
Okay, I just got an email this afternoon from MnDOT regarding the Highway 59 turnback construction. They're asking if the city wanted to put together a visual quality team. And I said, yes, I'm sure we do. And I recommended that the makeup of that team include 2 council members, staff from engineering, public works, planning, and maybe 1 or 2 of the businesses that would be on the path. So I'll need a couple of people that, if they're interested in serving on that, and the city council members are going to be here through that construction. So if you're interested in serving on that, just let me know, and I will start putting together a team of people. There'll be several meetings involved with that, and you'll be looking at the visual or aesthetic components that would be in the project. I'm attending a couple of cybersecurity classes on Wednesday in Mankato, so we'll see how that. Hope I understand anything that they have to say.
Don't click on anything.
Don't click on
Don't
it.
click on anything.
Right.
Just saying.
We're not successful in receiving workforce housing grants, and I had requested a debrief, and that's scheduled for tomorrow, late tomorrow morning, with Minnesota Housing. I want to find out how we scored, because I did not get a score on one of the grants that we put in, because they said we didn't qualify. So I want to know specifically what misunderstanding there may have been, or why we were deemed not to qualify. And last week we had our first union negotiation session with one of the law enforcement unions, and we're tomorrow with our public works and public utilities group. So we'll have that meeting, and I'll just say it's been very reasonable discussions. So that's been good. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, motion, and a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Steve, what time did